Hello again and welcome back to the channel. This is Michael from TOEFLresources.com. In today's video, I'm happy to share with you a guide to the new TOEFL listening section. As most of you probably know, on January 21st, the TOEFL is going to change completely. It's going to be almost like a totally new test. Everyone's very excited. Going to be new questions, new scoring, new guides, new everything. Today's video, we're talking about the new listening section. Now, if you're taking the test before January 21st, you probably should turn off this video and go check out some older materials. If you're taking this test on January 21st and later, this is exactly what you need to watch. So let's get started with a quick overview of the listening section. Now, just like in the reading section, it's going to be divided into two parts. First of all, we call a routing module, and then either a hard or an easy module. And they're going to be kind of adaptive. That means the difficulty will change based on your performance. Sounds kind of complicated, but it isn't really. Let's take a look. First up, as I said, is the routing module. This will contain maybe 20 or 30 questions. It'll actually be different for everyone who takes the test, slightly different. But it is going to be the same difficulty level for everyone. And for everyone, it will contain some scored and unscored questions. The task types, and we'll talk about these all in a moment, are choose a response, listen to a conversation, listen to an announcement, and listen to an academic talk. Remember, you can't go back and forth between questions. Once you pick an answer, you're locked in. You can't go back. You can't go back and change it. Now, if you do well in that routing module, you go on to the hard module. Has similar question types, but fewer and more academic content. If you do what we'll say is poorly, you go to the easy module. Again, it'll have similar questions, but fewer. And there'll be less academic content. Now, based on my research, the magic number seems to be about 60% correct to get the hard module. Don't quote me on that. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what my research is suggesting so far. If you get less than 60% correct, they might put you in the easy module. Now, the maximum score, if you end up in the hard module, is 6.0 out of 6.0. And it seems like the maximum score, if you get sent to the easy module, is approximately 4.0 out of 6. Again, don't quote me on this. I could be slightly wrong, but that is what my research is suggesting so far. All right, let's kind of dive right into the particulars by looking at the routing module. Now, I am going to mention one thing I can't talk about right now is the exact timing. That is how much time you have to answer each question. Since the test hasn't launched, that isn't exactly clear, but I'll try to give you some hints along the way. So first up in the routing module, you'll get the choose a response task. Looks kind of like this. You're going to hear a sentence and you have to pick the best response. Now, I've put the sentences here just to illustrate it, but remember, this is a listening test. You're not going to read it. You will only hear it. So, for example, the first question says, do you want to get lunch? The answer is, I'm not hungry. You kind of see already kind of what they're getting at here. The answers are kind of indirect. So you might expect, do you want to get lunch? Yes. Do you want to get lunch? No. Well, that's not what the test is like. The answer is, I'm not hungry. It's kind of like talking to your roommate, you know. It gets kind of frustrating sometimes. You're like, hey, you want to get something to eat? And instead of saying yes or no, he just says, I'm not hungry. Well, okay, fine. Another one. Are you going to school today? The answer is, actually, today is a holiday. So you can see it's not a yes, no. It's actually, today's a holiday. So, of course, I'm not going to school. It's indirect, but it still is a perfectly fine answer. And then here's another one. This is like kind of tricky. What time do I need to pick up Michael from the airport? The answer is, don't worry about it. I'll get them. Like, the answer you're expecting is 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. But no, the correct answer is, don't worry about it. I'll get them. And what makes it trickier is that all the other ones they make references to like airport stuff, but they're not correct. The correct answer doesn't even mention airports. So there you go. A few more quick ones. I'm not available tomorrow. So sometimes it's not even a question. I'm not available tomorrow. The answer is, what's a better day for you? See what I mean? I'm trying to solve the problem in my response. Do you want to go to the concert with us? Absolutely. So here, it's just a fun alternative to yes or no. I'm not available this afternoon. The response is, well, I understand. So it's like a polite acknowledgement of the statement. Here's a quick task description. Basically, you're going to get 8 or more of these on the test. And basically how it works, as I said, is you will listen to a sentence from conversational English and then pick the correct response to it. You will have 4 choices to pick from. Correct answers are often indirect, testing your pragmatic understanding of the language. And that's the key thing. It's a test of your pragmatic understanding. Some of you learning English who have traveled to another country, probably remember a time when you asked some guy on the street a simple question and you really just wanted a yes/no answer, and he said something like entirely different that you weren't expecting. And maybe you understood him, maybe not. But that's kind of what they're getting at here. It's actually fun. This is maybe my favorite part of the new listening section, just because it's kind of unexpected. I really didn't expect ETS to kind of put something like this on the test. And as I've been making practice materials, I've really come to love it. It's quite nice. Anyways, that's the first part of the listening section. Next up is listen to a conversation. This one's a little bit less interesting. Basically, you're going to hear a short conversation between 2 people. This one's about a man and a woman, and they're talking about her laptop, which is being repaired. And while she's waiting, she says she's going to use a laptop that the shop lent her. Heath says, that's very convenient. And then you get some basic questions about it. For example, the question says, what will the woman use while she is waiting? And the answer is a laptop from the shop. Pretty straightforward. Here's another one. How will the woman know her laptop is ready? The answer, she'll receive a text message. And that's coming just from the sentence, they'll text me when mine's ready. How interesting. You'll get 2 or 3 or 4 of these. They're pretty quick. Conversations are like 20 or 30 seconds each, and they're always between 2 people, a man and a woman. They're going to discuss a situation from their everyday life. It might be an on-campus thing or an off-campus thing. You'll answer 2 basic questions about it. You'll only be able to listen to this conversation. You can't read it. You can only listen one time. And notably, the questions only appear after the conversation is finished. You can't see the questions as you're listening to it. That could make it a little more difficult. I also want you to be prepared to make basic inferences. Like in this question, like it might have said, what can be inferred about the laptop, maybe? And then the answer would be like, the keyboard is not working. Or maybe like, what will the man do next? Or what will the woman do next? And it'll be based on something they say they're going to do at the very end of the conversation. These things could make it a little more tricky, but for the most part, these are pretty easy questions. I think this part of the test is really targeting whether or not you understand at like a B1 level, if you know what that means, maybe B2. Like this is testing kind of your understanding of the more basic English. Test gets harder later though. Next up, there is the listen to an announcement question. You'll get 2 or 3 of these, I guess. You're going to listen to an announcement. I've put the transcript here for your reference, but you can't read it. This is a listening test. In this case, it's about a study abroad session that's happening on Monday. Advisors and students will answer your questions. Everyone's welcome. Get a couple of basic questions. What is the main purpose of the announcement? To invite students to a study abroad information session. Simple, but that's kind of what it looks like. Who will be available to answer questions? The answer is past participants. And that's based on this sentence here, students who have previously studied abroad. It's a little trickier because there's sort of a paraphrase there, but again, it's pretty easy, I think. The announcements are like 20 or 30 seconds long. They describe upcoming events happening on campus or changes to some services on campus. They could be about stuff happening off campus, but it hasn't really come up much in my research. After each one, you will answer 2 questions. Also, you should be prepared for something like, what are the listeners asked to do? In my research, that came up a few times, and it's based on something that gets said at the very end of the announcement. So if the announcement ends with something like, if you're interested, register on the university website, you could get a question like, what are the listeners asked to do? And it would be, visit the university website. Very basic, but specific, I guess. As I said, these are pretty easy to, they're testing your understanding at like a B1 or a B2 level, I think. But then there are some difficult questions, finally. The last task type is the listen to an academic talk task. You're going to get 2 of these, maybe, possibly 3. You're going to listen to a lecture or maybe sort of like a podcast. It doesn't really matter what they call it, but they do seem to be calling it different things. Like it'll say, listen to an academic talk by a professor in a biology class. Listen to part of a podcast about a biology class. It doesn't seem to make a difference what they call it. It all kind of has the same format. Basically, here's a discussion from like a psychology class about something called pluralistic ignorance. The professor describes it, gives an example of it, and then kind of talks about how to deal with it in real life. And then you get some basic questions that appear after it's finished. Remember, the questions come after it's finished. So in this case, the first question is, what is the talk mainly about? And the answer in this case, if you want to pause it, you can read it. Reasons people stay silent when they disagree. This is a very common question type. It's often the first type. It's asking you the main topic of the talk. It'll be like, what is the talk mainly about? Something like that. Next up, this question asks you about a specific detail that came up in the lecture. So in this case, which strategy does the speaker recommend to improve lectures? In this case, the answer is B, again, allowing students to submit questions anonymously. It's just based on a specific detail they gave in the lecture. This is kind of like the old TOEFL, but shorter. Next up, here's another question. Why does the speaker mention hedging phrases? In this case, the answer is D, to show how students can help themselves. So this question is why? Why does he mention such and such? Why does the speaker mention so and so? This is a common type. It's asking why they do something in the lecture. Why do they mention something in particular? Another question, what can be inferred about filling in comment cards? In this case, the answer is B. It can be more comfortable for students than speaking. Again, this is a common question type. It's called an inference question. It mentions some detail, and you have to make an inference, an educated guess about something that was mentioned in the talk. And then the last question here, What will the students probably do next week? The answer is D, learn how to ask more useful questions. And this is based on something that is said at the very end of the lecture. This is a fairly common question type based on my research. It often comes up. So when you're doing the test, make sure you take a good note about what is said at the very end of the lecture. That could be the difference between getting the last question right or the last question wrong. These 5 seem to represent, as far as I can tell, the 5 main question types that you might get in this part of the test. But if you see something or you hear something slightly different, let me know in the comments below. A few notes about how this works. You're going to listen to 1 or more short academic talks. They'll be about 90 seconds each and will be followed by 5 questions. Remember, on the current TOEFL, they're like 6 minutes long, and you get like, oh gosh, I can't even remember now. I've been focused on the new one so much. I think it's like six questions, if I remember correctly, spread over 5 minutes. So the difference here is the lectures are short and it's very dense, right? Like basically everything that's said is fairly important, and it could be fair game for a question because they're jamming in a whole bunch of questions just based on a fairly short talk. They can be about a variety of topics, including psychology, sociology, history, economics, art, whatever. And ETS says that these are more likely to be about topics that modern test takers are familiar and comfortable with than on the old, like, current TOEFL. We'll see about that. I don't know. But, like, hopefully that's true. As I said, excuse me, I'm going to have a glass of water here. There are like 5 basic question types as far as I can tell. First up is the main idea questions, which ask you to identify the main point of a lecture. The answer is often contained near the beginning of the lecture. Not always, but often. Next up are detail questions. These are probably the most common. They ask you to identify some specific detail from the lecture. Next up are purpose questions. These ask you why the lecturer mentioned some specific thing in the lecture. Next up are inference questions. These ask you to make educated guesses about something mentioned in the lecture. And lastly are the do next questions. These ask you to identify what the class will do after the lecture. The answer is contained at the very end. So these are your types. If you notice something that's weird I haven't mentioned, let me know in the comments below. I'll update the video probably in February, I think, after everyone's taken the new test a bunch of times. A few general tips here, because I know this is the hardest part. I want you to take notes, make them as detailed as possible. Practice this skill. Practice your note-taking. Don't pick an answer just because it contains a word or phrase you remember from the talk. Incorrect answer choices often repeat words, while correct choices might use a synonym or paraphrase. Pay special attention to the supporting examples given by the speaker. They are often referred to in questions. And as I said, listen very carefully for phrases like next time we will, or in our next class, and make detailed notes about what is said, as that will be referred to in one of the questions. When I did my practice tests, I didn't think that was important, actually, and I didn't take any notes. And then I got those questions wrong because, like, I couldn't remember, right? Like, by the time I got to that question, like 5 minutes had passed, I don't know. And I was like, oh shoot, I don't know what they said at the end. I have no idea. So I got those questions wrong. So when you hear that, take notes. Seriously, listen to me, take those notes. Okay, so very quickly, we'll talk about the easy module. Not gonna give you more practice questions, but basically, as I said, if your performance is poor in the routing module, approximately less than 60% correct answers, you will probably be sent to the easy module. It's going to begin with several choose a response questions, quite a lot of them, and then you'll get conversations and announcements. I believe in this case there will be no academic talks. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, please leave a comment below. But based on my research, if you get sent to the easy module, the difference is that it's just the conversations, announcements, and the pick a response. No academic. And like it seems that the difficulty level of the conversations and the difficulty level of the announcements is the same as you're familiar with. But it's easy because there's none of those challenging academic talks. How about the hard module, which I know it's scary because it's called the hard module, but this is what you want to get. This must be your target. If your performance is strong in the routing module, approximately more than 60% correct answers, you will be sent to the hard module. It will begin with a small number of choose a response questions, which will then be followed by conversations, announcements, and academic talks. That's the difference. If you go to the hard module, you're getting at least one more academic talk. That's what makes it hard. All right, so that's about it. I don't know anything else so far, but if you have any questions, you can leave a comment down below. I'll come by and answer it as soon as I can, or you can visit me on my website at TOEFLresources.com, where I have guides to every section of the test. You can sign up for tutoring and lessons. You can read my blog. You can look at my family pictures. That's my home on the internet. So just come on by anyways and see what you can find. All right, going to leave it at that. But next up, of course, will be a video about the new speaking section. I'm working on it already. It should be up, I don't know, maybe by the end of this month or maybe at the beginning of December. I'm going to take a holiday in January, so I got to get them up pretty soon. Time's running out. Anyways, I'm going to take a vacation in Egypt and Jordan, by the way. So if you know anything about those countries, or if you're from one of those countries and somehow you're still watching this video, I don't know, maybe you could like send me a message and I'll buy you a cup of coffee and you can tell me about the place where you live. I'd love to learn more about it. Anyways, I am rambling, so I'm going to cut off this video. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, blah, blah, blah. Talk to you later. Bye.